We're going to spend some time talking a little bit about Oracle and the applications on Oracle. Just want to, again, phrase that neither Lauren nor I are experts in the Oracle system, but we want to be able to give you some pointers as a new or relatively new and or person thinking of becoming a principal. And later on, we'll be joined with two of our colleagues who we will introduce to you later on. So you can quickly just take a look at the norms, but just being here on time, being present and engaged, assume positive intent and contribute equally to this discussion. I think one other thing we want to add is as we're going through this session, if you have questions, because you'll see some videos, can you just put your questions in the chat box, and Lauren and I will do our best to address them during the session. And if we're unable to get to them, then we will make sure we capture them and put a Q&A together and send out to all of you. So again, really just thinking about Oracle and the various applications that are part of Oracle as we go through the session today. Does anybody remember what the system is called that houses the CPS budget? If so, can you go ahead and drop that in the chat box? Or feel free to unmute even and tell us what the name of that system is. Good job, Kelly. Good job, Pedro. It is called the Oracle system. It also goes by another name. So what is the other name for the Oracle system? So if you were logging on to the CPS home screen and you were looking to get to Oracle, do you know what that name is? If so, go ahead and drop it in that chat box or unmute and share out. Enterprise Financial Services is correct. So just to give you a view of what that would look like when you log on to the CPS, oh my gosh, hi. The CPS system, you're going to go to the staff page, and down on the staff page, you're going to see financial or enterprise financial services. And that's where you would click on to access Oracle to get to your budget. So once you actually click on Oracle and access your budget, you're going to get a screen that looks very similar to this. It may not look exact as mine. I have a lot more applications on mine based on previous jobs that I've had in the district. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the left side right now, what you may or may not see on your personal page. And it'll differ from principal to assistant principal and other various people on your staff. But you'll have the CPS approver and your unit number, which is actually where you go into, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation, to actually place orders or create purchase orders and to approve requisitions, etc. Then there's the budget transfer system, which we'll talk a little bit about during this presentation. I'm going to skip the next one because that one really wouldn't be on anybody's. There's the CPS grant and gift donations, where if you get a grant or a donation, you need to go into that application and actually accept the grant in there. And there's some steps in there. We're not going to talk a lot about that today, but that does exist. And that's where you would go if you receive monies for your school in any way, shape, or form. And then the CPS-I expense, we're going to touch on a little bit, especially as it pertains to travel for your staff and or yourself in terms of going to a conference or any type of travel for CPS. CPS-I leasing, I'm not going to touch on that at all because I don't lease any parts of my building. Lauren does. She might be able to talk about that as we go through the presentation or kind of chime in on that. Your internal accounts is in here, and then CPS positions is where you would find all of your positions for your school, as well as open closed positions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. CPS student travel, we're not going to talk about during this presentation, but this is where you would go if you were going to send any of your students out on a field trip during the day. You have to go in here and complete an application, usually 2 to 3 weeks prior to that travel. Enter your chaperone information, enter your the cost, enter the approval, enter busing company that you may or not be using. And that's where all that student travel goes into and has to be approved. The CPS supplemental pay approver system is for your after school or before school payment to your staff. Not going to talk about that during this presentation, but that's what that one is for. And then CPS time and effort. So within your budget, any part of your budget other than school-based budgeting, you may have to enter time and effort information, and that's usually connected to ESSA. And that is a sheet that comes out each semester that you have to indicate by employee if they got paid overtime or if they get paid in a position that they are fully, you have to put their schedule in the system and verify that they're getting paid from that federal grant. Web inquiry we'll do a little bit on today, and then I'm not going to touch on the CPS workflow user, but that's actually where you would go into to approve any of your transactions. And those few of these things that we didn't talk about, we'll talk about during office hours if anyone needs them. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So the link that you go to access your full budget is the CPS web inquiry. And so when you get there, you would double click that CPS web inquiry button. And what you see are the various different transactions that exist within that component. So we're going to talk about one of them right now, specifically the funds inquiry. And so Amir is going to play a little video for you. I hope that you're able to hear it. And I apologize because I'm not great at creating videos. You'll see the screen that looks like this. You're going to double click CPS web inquiry, which brings you to here. In order to find your budget, you click on funds inquiry. And this screen will open. You enter your 5-digit Oracle unit number and hit go. Then your entire budget will pop up. If you would like to see your entire budget, you hit print funds. And once you click on it, you will be able to print your entire budget by hitting print. Go.
Lisa, you're on mute.
Good. I said we were going to pause there for a second just to see if anybody had any questions around where you actually access your budget. And if so, either drop it in the chat box and or unmute, and Laura and I would be happy to answer. I'm going to take that as no. So we're going to go on and share this little video, which is going to talk a little bit more about how else you can search for your fund specifically to search your budget specifically by fund number. Budget is, once you click on web inquiry and your unit number is in, if you just want to search a specific fund, you can enter the fund. In this case, I'm going to enter school-based budgeting, which is Fund 115. And I'm then going to, you'll see it says General Education Fund. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to hit go. And now it's just going to show me my budget for 115. If I want to go even more deeper, I can change the account to just non-payroll. And I hit go again. And now it only gives me lines with available funding on it, or in some cases no available funding. But it is all of my lines that I created when I opened my budget that are not connected to position numbers. And obviously when you scroll to the right, you can see in details what that line is for. So my very first line was for physical education for supplies. $2,000 goes to support my physical education program. Over here again you see the unit number, the fund number, the account number, the program, which is physical education, and the grant number, which we talked about last time we were together. Anybody have any questions about specifically keying down to a specific fund to look at your budget? I just wanted you to make note, I didn't have to put anything in the account number or the program number because you don't need that just to search by the fund. But if you do, feel free again to go ahead and unmute and or put anything in the chat box. Go ahead, Amir. Budget is once you click. So when you're doing a web inquiry, there's several ways to search your budget, as we showed first. One is just simply by entering your unit number and hitting go, and then that budget will pre-populate. You can also search by fund number. For example, I could have put in 332 and hit go, and it would have given me my entire ESSA budget. The video showed me doing that with Fund 115, but you can do it with any fund number. You can also search it specifically by payroll or non-payroll, which was in the upper right-hand side. If you do payroll, it's simply going to show you by each fund number how many salaries are purchased in each fund. If you do non-payroll, it's going to be those budget lines that are there and available for you to spend. The same you can do for account, and the same you can do for your grant if you want to do a very specific search, especially if you're at an LSC meeting or someone comes to you and says that they need to see something specific. It's easiest just to key right in onto what they're specifically looking for. So now we're going to move down to a budget transfer. And we're going to get through a video. You're going to see me do a budget transfer, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what specifically you have to have in place to transfer any funds within your budget once it's loaded in the beginning of summer. Do a budget transfer. So again, when you log on to Oracle, you're going to see applications along the left-hand side. You may or may not have all that I have available to myself, but I would click on budget transfer and it opens up this budget transfer line. Once I click on budget transfer, I'm going to do a budget transfer entry. So I'm going to go here and click on budget transfer entry, and this is what appears. In order for me to do a budget transfer, I have to use the same unit number on both sides. So I'm transferring from my unit one line to my unit another line. I have to use the same fund as well. So in this case, I'm going to do a transfer from Fund 115, which is the General Education SBB fund. And I'm going to transfer money from my book supply line, my non-instructional materials, or my instructional materials non-digital. And I'm going to use program 119035, which is other instructional programs, and I know that I have money on that line. And I'm going to use the grant number, which I said in the last session never changes when it's school-based budgeting. So I need to go to a different account. So I'm going to transfer money from the instructional materials non-digital line to the supply line, which is 53405. And if I just hover for a second, it's going to pop up automatically. I'm going to click on it and it will enter in there. And then I'm going to transfer to the same program number. And again, it has to be the same grant. So the things that have to be the same are the unit number, the fund number, not always the program, but always the grant in the year. I'm just going to put $10 here just to be able to show you an example, and I'm going to write a description. So transfer monies from non-digital instruction to purchase supplies to support the literacy program. And then what I would end up doing is hit submit and copy, which I'm going to do for the purposes of this demonstration, and then I'll reverse it later. And what you'll see is that I got a confirmation of my transfer. So a couple things on that particular slide. If you don't hit submit and copy, you won't be able to later see in this right-hand section over here the transaction that I had actually completed. The other thing is where I put approved by LSC, I would suggest putting approved by LSC at such and such meeting date, because then you can always go back and connect it to your LSC minutes in the event that you were ever audited or someone was questioning a transfer. To do a budget transfer. So some things to consider or to know, I guess, when making those transfers.
Lisa, someone has a question, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thanks, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So I know that a person can't make a request. I know the same person can't request and approve. So can the same person do a transfer and then put in the request? So say like if I want to transfer funds from the trip from 54210 to pay for supplies, can I make that transfer and then go in there and put the request in for the trip and my principal approves it?
Yes, so once you go ahead and put it in, that transfer will go to another person to approve it, depending on, it's different in each building or different based on each person's position. So yeah, it will go to somebody to approve that transfer once you actually enter it. So it could be denied, right? And they may say it's denied because it's not a valid transfer. I mean, it very rarely does it get denied, but it does get denied at times. And you would get notice of that in your email, plus in that section where you saw, Amir, can you go back one page if possible? So in this right-hand side, you would see a notice that your transaction had been rejected. And so you would be able to go and open it up to tell why it was rejected. But yes, you could go ahead and do that. I would just wait till you saw that, well, you couldn't even pay for something if it wasn't approved because those monies wouldn't move over, right? So if you went to go then pay for whatever you had to pay for after you transferred it, and you actually entered that PO, it's going to come up not enough funds, and it would probably be because it was rejected. Does that make sense?
No, I get that. I'm just saying, once it's approved, can I then go back in there and put the requisition in, even though I was the one who did the budget transfer? That's what I was.
Yes, if you can.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep. So some things to remember when transferring funds. And so I'm verbatimly going to read this just because it's a lot, but I don't usually do that. This time I will. So the LSC, you have to remember that the LSC monitors the budget, your internal accounts, and the implementation of your CIWP. So just some things to remember. The LSC is involved in ongoing monitoring of the budget and is required to approve any changes in the way of funding that funds are used, especially budget transfers. If your school wants to spend funds in ways not specified in the budget, the principal must obtain approval from the LSC. If there are major changes, $5,000 or more in the budget, their effect on the school improvement plan, your CIWP plan, must be assessed before they are actually approved. So budget transfers must be approved by at least 7 members in an elementary school and 8 in a high school. Changes in the use of your Title I parent involvement funds, which are your 332 monies, have to be voted on by the school's PAC before being submitted to the LSC for approval and then for a transfer. And then budget transfers can only take place within the same fund and grant. Go ahead, Amir. So requisitions that are over $5,000 also require your network chief or central office approval. And then expenses over $10,000 for biddable purchases or over $25,000 for non-biddable purchases require both the LSC and central office approval. Purchases over $75,000 have to be approved by the LSC and the Board of Education. And those are done by special documents at a board approval meeting. I'm not going to talk about that here, but there are specifics when you get to that $25,000 or $75,000 or more. And so in terms of internal accounts, in addition to your school's budget, all schools have internal accounts, and the school's internal account is a management system designed to handle the cash that schools get from students, parents, and the community. The sources of this cash include student fees, fundraising activities, maybe vending machines, special events, a class ring sale, gifts, grants, or donations. And these accounts can add up to a substantial amount of money. So the internal accounts monies must be used to directly or indirectly benefit the students within the current school year. And that's the same for the regular budget. It has to benefit students for the during the regular school year. And just a few more things to think about. So the LSCs have the authority to approve all internal account receipts and expenditures and approve all internal accounts expenditures over $1,000 at elementary schools and $2,500 at high schools for all CPS attendance centers prior to the expenditure by a affirmative majority vote of the LSC members. And then on a monthly basis, schools' internal accounts report and bank statements activities are approved. And that is through your SCC person, but the principal and or their designee also has to approve it within the Oracle system. And so there also has to be approval for fundraising activities by non-school organizations using school facilities. And then as a new principal and or someone thinking to be a principal, when you get to a school, you always want to request and have an audit done of your school's internal accounts. And there's the number there and how to reach out to that audit services, because you don't ever want to be I guess, blamed or held responsible for something that the previous person prior to you holding that office or that seat did. And so you want to make sure those audits are done. Go ahead, Amir. Does anyone have any questions about those budget transfers besides our friend? Okay. So we're going to talk about I-expenses at school. And then when you look at the screen, you're going to see where it says I-expense. This is where you would go to when, will we have access to the notes? Sure, you'll have access to the whole PowerPoint if you would like. So we're going to go on to I-expense schools and you'll see a little demonstration. I'll talk a little bit more about this specifically. In this quick video, I'm going to talk about the CPS I-expense school. So again, I'm going to double click on there. And you'll see these 4 drop downs: employee reimbursement, school reimbursement, transaction inquiry, and travel approval. Travel approval is used for any time that you or any of your employees go on a conference outside of the city. You have to create a travel approval. And so what you would do is you would hit travel approval here, and this screen will pop up. And you would need to enter all of this identifying information here. Your name, the contact number, the name of the event. So in this case, say I'm going to Courageous Conversations. I would put the date, the name of the event there, the location of the travel, how it relates to my job, and how it relates to my CIWP. I also have to add the dates that I will be traveling and the purpose of my travel. When you click this Add Travel Type, it'll pop up. I'll show you. Since I don't know what's in there, I'm just going to hit the % sign. You can use this % sign in Oracle all the time and hit go, and it will give you options. So in this case, I'd be going because I was going for professional development. I would click that and I would hit select and it would pre-populate. Then you go down here, it's going to ask you such things as will you be getting a stipend for this travel, and have you check the GSRA rate for location travels to see if it falls within the guidelines of the city. You then have to indicate who is paying for this. So are you paying for it but yourself? Are you using a grant? Is somebody else paying for it? And you enter that into one of these lines. And then I would always say that you want to put a note here so that the person approving it can see it. And then you're going to enter an estimated cost and you'll hit save. The other thing you would need to do is hit, it's not going to allow me because I have not filled out the whole page, but you're going to have to hit any attachment. So if you have the attachment for the conference, you need to upload that attachment here, and you need to upload any travel documents that you will have. You also need to complete this ethics committee certification form, which looks like this. And your chief would have to sign off on it, or whoever is your, in the case of it was a staff member, you would sign off on it. If you're traveling, you have to have your chief sign off on it. And then that form gets uploaded back into this attachment, and you would just indicate what that is or why you're traveling. And then you hit submit. In this quick video, so a couple things to think about in terms of the I expense and travel. So the travel form must be completed and approved at least a minimum of 3 weeks prior to travel for yourself or any of your staff members. And again, under that attachment, you need to add all travel documents. So your flight verification, how much it costs, the actual conference, the registration, and that ethics form. And so that ethics form does need to be completed and signed by a supervisor. Otherwise, it's not actually considered an approved travel from the district. And then upon your return, any reimbursements must be approved in the travel app, or any reimbursements must be approved in the travel application. And so in order to get reimbursed, you have to make sure that you have that travel document filled out. And then you need to submit your receipts within 90 days of your travel to get reimbursed. And I am actually trying to get reimbursed from a conference that I just attended a couple weeks ago. And I keep getting pushback from the district because they want to see confirmation also from my conference. They want a very specifically broken down receipt. And so, for example, I had to park at Midway when I left, and I obviously paid for parking when I got out, but the receipt that I was given was just for the total amount. So it doesn't say the day that I entered and the day that I left. It just says the total amount when I was traveling for work. And so they're giving me a lot of pushback right now in terms of getting reimbursed for that because it's not a broken down receipt. So you want the most specific things as possible. And remember also that they will not reimburse you for taxes. And so just think about making sure that you're collecting all those documents and saving them, especially if you need to be reimbursed for anything. Go ahead there. So I'm not gonna talk about PC positions right now because I'm gonna just give you a little information here, because in our next session, we're gonna talk more about how to open up positions, close positions, and create bucket numbers, especially as we will be approaching opening budgets or creating CIWPs for the following school year. But inside of PC positions, you can open, close, or modify a position, and positions must be opened and attached to the correct program number. So if a school was audited, you want to make sure that the teaching position is attached to the actual position and program that they are teaching in. For example, if they're teaching in a literacy position, you want to make sure that they are being paid for out of 119015, which is attached to literacy. So those positions as they open have to be attached to the exact position that people are working in. And remember that only in Fund 332, only instructional positions can be opened within that fund. So for example, you cannot open a security guard in PC positions because it's not for instructional purposes. And I spoke a little bit about using those correct program numbers when you are opening positions. But again, we'll go deeper into positions in our next session because we will very shortly start writing CIWPs and opening up budgets for the following school year. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that next time we're together. Under PC positions, there also is, however, what they call a BEM inquiry. So if you currently are in a school where you've opened buckets to fund before and after school positions, you would be able to go into that BEM inquiry, and you would simply put your unit number and hit go. And right now you're looking at an example of my current BEM report that I printed yesterday. So if you're looking at my very top line, you'll see that I have negative funds because there's parentheses around here. So this bucket was over expended by $1,992. And you can see that on the 23rd of October, the district closed that position. And so what that means, if I go into my budget right now, I'm going to see a negative, and I'm going to have to go to my LSE to ask to move monies in order to be able to clear that negative. And then as you look down available funds, you'll see the amounts that I currently have available to spend this year. And when you look to the left-hand side, you will see the actual fund number, grant number, program number, and account that it's attached to. So everything is very, very specifically attached to the program that it services. And one last thing about this, but again, we'll talk more about this the next time. You can see how much has been expended currently. So one of my buckets right now, I've used 18% of that money. Obviously, by the end of the school year, I want to be as close to 100% as possible. And I'll talk more about that in the next session about what happens to those monies if they are not all expended. And so now Lauren and I are going to actually show you how to create a purchase order within the CPS system. And so she's going to take over the screen and she's going to go into Oracle, and we are going to walk you through creating a purchase order for those of you that are not really familiar with this. We will do our best. So I'm going to give her a second to get logged in there. Lauren.
Yeah, I'm having some, it's not letting me share. Hang on.
Okay. Just didn't know if we lost you along the way either.
No, I'm here. Hang on.
While Lauren's over there trying to get herself logged in, does anybody have any questions related to Oracle and or any budget questions that we might be able to answer while we are paused? I see a head shake. No. That might make me think I might be doing my job, or you know a lot right now, and so that's okay too.
Hey, Lisa,
Yes.
Lauren needs to be added back on. She said she got kicked off.
Amir, can you
I
add
let her back in. I don't know.
that happened to
Yeah.
I'm
you?
here.
There she is.
Sorry, my screen is not wanting to share today. Hang on.
Katie, go ahead and ask your question while we wait. Sorry.
Thank you. This is great. So thank you, Lisa and Lauren and the fund. Lisa, sometimes they'll just be like these random chunks of money in the budget that, well, miscellaneous charges. And I always get excited, but then get weary. So could you talk a bit about that and maybe the
Yeah,
best
Katie, can you be a little bit more specific? So did you see something pop up recently?
Yeah, it'll say miscellaneous charges, instructional purposes, and it's 115. I can show you maybe offline and I can get
Yeah, I
your.
can look at it. So I know that some schools did just recently, or they're about to receive monies, especially if you possibly received an additional number of students, right? So that might be popping up as miscellaneous, and it may be there now. I know that I saw a large chunk of miscellaneous money pop up in 115 because there was a bulletin that came out, I don't know, about a month ago that said that we would be receiving monies to be able to purchase uniforms associated to sports. That could be what it is too. So, but I will definitely look at it with you later and see if I can figure out exactly what it is, but that does happen often. And it could also be that you hired somebody, right? You might see excess money in like your, oh God, I have a blank right now, but employee something line, I can't think of it, because you may have hired a staff member that cost less than what you budgeted for. So you'll see a large chunk of money also show up in the budget. That's probably truly there. But I know that the board has added in some funds based on either enrollment right now and or those uniforms. Okay, it looks like Lauren is logged on, and she logged on as herself.
Yeah, I'm gonna do myself.
Okay, do you have something specific to order, by the way? Because I was really gonna order something.
No, I'll just cancel it when I get to the end.
Okay, so go ahead and so Lauren is on, and she's gonna click on iProcurement homepage. And when she clicks on that, you're going to see either you could do a non-catalog request, or in this case, we're going to go to CPS Marketplace. And she's going to double click on that. Or click on it.
Hang on, it's slow.
And now what ends up popping up is all of the vendors and or options for being able to create a purchase order that are vetted by the district. So they are currently vendors that the district says that we are allowed to use. If you have a vendor that also, if you want to purchase something from a vendor that is also CPS approved, but they're not a strategic sourcing vendor, on the screen that Lauren was just on, there was something called a non-catalog request. And so you would go there to create the same type of purchase order she's going to create right now. But she now is blacked out again. This is the story of my life.
It locks me out constantly. Oh,
Yeah.
great.
But we will try again.
All right, that's not working.
Okay, well, we may have a flop on this one. But the reason she so kindly,
There we
oh, there we go. So again, she clicks on that, iProcurement home. And if she was going to do a non-catalog request, she would go here. And so in order to, can we stay here for 1 second? So right now, if she's searching for a supplier and she doesn't necessarily know the name, she's going to, don't do anything yet. She's going to click on that microphone or that magnifying glass, and I'm going to have her put a % sign in there. And I'm just going to have her put a letter or two after that % sign. And I'm
Oh,
going to
you don't even have to do that.
well, but can you do that one for me though too? So she did learning, and learning pops up. If you don't know learning and you just put the % sign, don't even put learning and just put the L and hit go. Okay, hit, give it a couple more, letters, L-E. Okay, L-E-R. L-E-R.
Doesn't work.
It should work, but okay. I will find that.
Mine works like that.
Yours works like that. Well, I will show in another space where you can do that, but you can just put the % sign oftentimes, and it will drop down and list everything. In this case, if she was going to purchase something from Learning A to Z, she could quickly click on that quick select, and it would pre-populate there. On the left-hand side, she would have to be very specific and put a description in of what she's purchasing. And under that, under category, she's going to put the account number, and it's going to populate. But also here, this is where you could put that % sign and it would drop down. You don't even have to put book, you just put %, not %. Oh, you're putting a dollar? I'll put the % sign. Yes, now put nothing else. There you go. So when you hit that % sign, it will drop down all of your different options, and you can search or select from there. If you definitely don't know specifically what you're looking for, that % sign will help you out in Oracle at all given times. Go ahead. So then she just put the quantity, and then she would put the unit number. And she would also have to put a supplier item number. And then in this case, she would add it to the cart. And when she adds it to the cart is where she's going to have to go to then put her budget line in to actually create the PO or the purchase order.
Hang on.
And then she's going to click on that view cart and check out. And she would enter the budget line here. And if you don't know those budget lines, you can either use your budget or you can use that cheat sheet that we gave you last session that talks about each individual budget line. And then she would hit apply, which would then take her to check her funds. So when she hits check funds up in the left-hand corner, it's going to say whether or not she has funds available in that line. She does. So in this case, she would hit apply. And when she would hit next is when she has to send it to the approver in her building. So in each of your buildings, you have an approver and or initiator. So one person can initiate, but they can't initiate the transaction and approve also. So if you have an initiator, then you have an approver. You could also be an approver and send it to someone else in your building that would have to approve. So an approver can create, Lauren is considered an approver. She can initiate a purchase order, but it will then send it to somebody else in her building to approve. And in this case, it's going to her assistant principal. So her assistant principal would get the transaction within Oracle and she would have to approve the purchase. So she's going to cancel it because we don't want to purchase whatever she's purchasing right now. The only difference is when you go into the marketplace, you would search specific vendors, and those are strategic sourcing vendors, and the prices generally are lower for something that you may purchase on this system. So you may go and you can look at it two ways. You can look at it by picture, or just a second ago, you saw it listed just by names. So she might want to purchase something out of office supplies. So she's going to click on that beautiful picture of office supplies. And
But Lisa, you can also just search in the keyword and it'll search all the vendors.
you can do that too. But if you want to go to a specific one,
Yeah.
you can also pick that specific vendor.
It's thinking. And then these are all the different suppliers.
And so you could create a purchase order simply this way, just by adding it to a cart. Or the other option would be to select the specific vendor and it will let you pick from their catalog. And you go through the same processes, except for it's going to check to see if there was a lower pencil.
Oh, and it logs me out like it does every time, and I have to do it again.
Okay, don't worry about it. We'll pause there because it would just take you through those same next steps.
Yeah.
Where you would then enter your budget line and send it to an approver. And if you are using Oracle, if you are using a Mac, which I think Lauren was using a Mac, it won't let you create purchase orders any longer on Chrome. You have to specifically use Safari. If you're using Safari, it will transfer that information into your cart. So thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you. So now we are going to pause there just to see if you have any quick questions that we can answer about anything that we've shown so far. If not, we are going to invite two of our colleagues to talk a little bit more about their experiences with budget. Okay. I'm going to assume, since you are all so quiet, that we are going to move on, and we are going to invite Dr. Rashid Shabazz and Catherine Clocker to our session. They're going to be our panelists for today to talk a little bit more about their experiences with CPS and budgets. So once I see my lovely friends and colleagues, I think Amir's going to pin them to the screen in a second.
Lisa, do you want me to share the screen again or no?
No, you don't need to share the screen. You're good.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You're Catherine and Rashid here, because I definitely don't see them. So if you see them,
I'm here.
You're here. Yay. Okay, so I am gonna just open it up to Catherine, because she said she was here just to tell a little bit about herself, how long she's been a principal, and the school that she serves in.
I see Rashid too, just so you know, he's here too.
There you go. And the community that you serve. Can you just talk a little bit about your school for a quick second?
Sure, I'm a neighborhood school, and it's Burley. It's a K-8 school neighborhood. We have about, give or take, we have about 500 students currently at Burley. We don't receive any Title I funding, and very, very, very little. I call it SGSA, but it's the, what is this? It's the state, like the free reduced lunch funding. I don't know why it's not coming to my tip of my brain. So most of my budget, 95% of my budget is solely per pupil. And so it's $115 per pupil, and everything else, I get a little bit of Title II to keep some payroll afloat, and most of the rest of the funds I get are through fundraising. I start off my school budget with just baseline staffing at about almost negative $200,000 every year. And so my parent fundraising has to fundraise about $200,000 just for baseline staffing. I have one clerk, one assistant principal, and everybody else is in a classroom with full classes. So so budget's really tight. And I actually, because of that situation, I've been at Burley for now, this is my 13th year. I've gotten really good at bleeding in orange, and I'm very type A about budget and spending. So I work closely between fundraising and my minimal school budget to make it as whole as possible and make it work. So,
Thanks.
yeah.
Yeah, one last question for you though. How many years have you been principal at Burley?
This is my 11th year.
Thanks, my friend. Rashid, can you just tell us a little bit about your school, what side of this city you serve on, and your population, and anything you want to quickly say about your budget?
All right, first and foremost, I wanted to say this is a dope session for all our administrators on. If we had something like this when I started, it would be worthwhile, and I hope you're learning a lot because they're doing a great job during this session. I'm Rashid Shabazz. I'm a principal at Wadsworth STEM School on the south side of Chicago. We do have, we receive title monies in the different categories. However, budget is always tight each and every year, especially this year and last year. During COVID, currently we sit on about 480 students. However, during COVID, we lost 120 students during that transition. And out of that 120, I would say about 35, 40 rotated back. So that meant our budget was extremely short. And again, really, really tight. A lot of our budget goes to staffing and then like human resources that we need in and around the building.
Thanks. And how long have you been there?
This is my 8th year at Wadsworth still.
Thanks. So for either you and or Catherine or both of you, can you just tell us how you learned about the Oracle system and how you might have been trained when you were a new principal or assistant principal? Either one of you or both of you.
I can start. So I was fortunate that I was the assistant principal for my predecessor, Barbara Kent, and she taught me a lot, as much as she could, about budget. But Oracle is very overwhelming. We had a clerk at the time that could rattle off all the numbers like Rain Man, and it makes it even harder as a incoming principal to like kind of get your grasp around it, right? I say this because people are in different situations. If you have a clerk that really, really knows their stuff and can give you a little bit of sea legs, it's really helpful, because I had that my first couple of years where I didn't have to learn at that time how to put an order in. I didn't have to search those cheat sheets on the numbers because I worked with her closely. Everything that was done, we did together, but she was kind of teaching me as we went, and she knew Oracle and knew a lot of those things. She knew how to do the transfers. People are in different positions in different situations. So I had a little bit of a learning curve. And so there were some areas that I jumped into quickly. Funds inquiry has always been and will always be my best friend, but you have to download, print fund or whatever, because if you just look at the beginning screen, you only see for some reason a little bit until you download the whole thing. And then I always sort payroll and non-payroll for different purposes and reasons. But if you have a clerk or have somebody that you can really trust and you can work together, can give you a little bit of that breathing room, it's really helpful. If not, I mean, there's definitely I have some tips and advice of where to begin. And I've had some clerk transitions over time. So like I've had to learn how to do things over time that I didn't have to really focus on before, but kind of approaching it as a team.
Thanks very much.
For me, the learning curve was very, very steep. I came into Chicago Public Schools from another district, and in the district I was in another state. Administrators had nothing to do with budget. There was nothing we had to do that pertained to budget whatsoever. So entering the district, I went to any and every training or PD that the district offered at the time. Also, at the time, the district allowed you to bring on a budget specialist. So I brought on a budget specialist to help me dot my I's, cross my T's, and I stayed in my budget specialist's hip pocket. I'm trying to learn any and everything I could about Oracle and the budget because, again, the learning curve is steep coming from a district where principals weren't responsible with or had anything to do with budgets.
So we only have a few more minutes to ask a couple more questions, but I want to ask you both two specific questions. So at the start of your school year, and even possibly this school year, how do you begin conversations with your LSC in terms of your budget and how it connects to your CIWP? And if you could just give like a minute or so response to that so we can get through a couple other questions. Rashid, go ahead since I see you.
All right. First and foremost, with my LSC participates in the budget every step of the way. Word of advice I had was give the LSC your entire budget so they can see what's going on. That makes the conversation and the communication relationship go well. Therefore, when it comes time to make decisions on budget, and as long as you can present and show how it's beneficial to your staff and your students at the school, the LSC is just generally on board with approving all budget inquiries that you bring to their direction.
Thanks. Catherine, anything you might want to add?
Yeah, I always print off my non-payroll lines. I don't share my entire budget, and my LSC doesn't ask me or want me to because they don't need to see and want to see the healthcare and all the salaries. They know what I'm sharing with them is what's left after my staff is paid for. But my LSC also knows very clearly that our budget doesn't cover everything. So I always print off my internal accounts and I go through the lines. I talk through my strategy with it. The other big thing I'm very transparent up front is my thinking around my financial approach of spending, which it's built a lot of trust over time with my LSC. I know I learned the hard way my first year. If you don't know this, hopefully you don't have to learn this the hard way, please know. I'm more conservative with my 115 because we know you can't cross funds. So I try not to go negative with salary, and almost all of my salaries in 115. So there is a big HR adjustment potentially in late October, early November, usually 8 October. I think we just hit that probably, where your HR positions adjust from last spring, right? So when we start the school year, we think we have this money in our budget, but all your new hires and their healthcare and everything that hasn't adjusted yet. And we see a big hit. There's a number of people that have seen some significant negatives in the past couple of weeks. That's that HR adjustment. I always know if to prepare some money to maybe have to clear negatives around late October, early November. And then my other big hit, my first year, I got a $16,000 negative in February, which I died because I didn't see it coming. Healthcare adjustments. People start having babies or changing their healthcare or going on their partner's insurance, right? Or if it goes the other way, you get some money back. But you're going to find end of January, beginning of February, there's a potential because open enrollment's now and it doesn't start until January 1st. And by the time it catches up in your budget, it's late January, early February. And it's potential to see another big negative if people are making life changes or having healthcare changes, because we see that in our budget and we have to clear that. So I pay my bills. I plan strategically. Everything I purchase and is in alignment and purposeful, but I don't do a lot of year-end spending. I have my wish list and I create that and I wait till after that February HR push because I got burned one year really bad. That was really hard, and so I always wait till after my healthcare trues up and then I know what I have to spend for the rest of the year. And then I start making those purchases, preparing for the next year.
That absolutely probably was some great advice and some great things to think about, especially as you become a new principal and things that you wouldn't realize or think about in learning. And so I'm really glad that you brought those 2 points up. I think that's helpful for everyone. So we have 3 minutes left in terms of the questions. And I want to ask you and Rashid one more question. Totally doesn't have anything to do with budget. But what is one piece of advice you would give to these amazing educators as they move through this year as either new principals, some veteran principals, and or an AP that's joining us today? And go in either order, Catherine and or Rashid.
Rely on your colleagues and your friends. Being a principal is hard. Budget's hard for everybody. Oracle's hard for everybody. It's year 11. I still struggle with stupid pointer lines for some reason. It's not, you become better at it, but don't be okay not being an expert at it. Know who your friends are, know who's really good at what, and reach out. We all know this is a really hard job, and most of our administrative colleagues are willing to help each other because we all walk in the shoes and live it. So reach out, ask for help, build your list of people to help each other, and don't try to do it in a silo because it's just too stressful of a job and it's too hard to try to do alone is truthfully my biggest piece of advice. I rely on my colleagues and my friends so much. I know what my strengths are, and I know what my colleagues' strengths are, and we have to be okay asking each other for help, and people will help each other.
Thank you so much, Rashid. That leaves you with the same exact question.
Ditto, 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 and take it one day at a time. Take care of yourself. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, and I get that advice plenty of time. Network, network, network. Build a correlation of principals, assistant principals who understand this work that you can reach out to on a daily basis. And don't be afraid to ask questions. We don't know it all. And when you ask questions, you're able to learn. And also any trainings, PDs, like I said before, jump in sessions like this. This is great to be part of this PLC, but jump in any PLC, any training, any PD, so you can always learn and continue to learn. And also give back to your colleagues who may call upon you to ask you as well. So that's the advice I have. And good luck and have a great year.
One more thing I want to add. Sorry, Lisa, I just thought of one thing I do, and I teach everybody. My principal taught me, and I teach people at the very end of the year before your budget closes, print out a hard copy, a full-fledged hard copy of your full budget. I staple it, I put it in a folder, and I shred it after a couple of years because I found sometimes money that should have rolled over didn't, or, and if you don't have that hard copy and that proof, sometimes when you get your new budget and you're like, where is that money, or how much should it be that should roll over and stuff. I always print a hard copy of my budget and I stick it in a file in my desk called budget, and I use it save it for the next year. You might not need to reference it, but I have needed to reference it, and I found money that didn't return until I pointed it out. And it's because I had that sheet. So that's another tip of advice I would do.
Thank you both. So I just want to thank Amir, obviously, for hosting us today, but Rashid, Catherine, and Lauren, and all of you. So